perfection. An aspect that most people want to achieve, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, who wouldn't? By definition, being perfect is being flawless. But what if I told you that perfection isn't a one-size-fits-all condition? Keep this in mind since it will be important later, but for now, let's talk about zombies, or more specifically, zombie games. When it comes to zombie games, you might think of games like Left 4 Dead 2, The Last of Us, or COD Zombies. And while all those are great games, the game I want to talk about today is a Roblox game?
Scum of the earth.
Guts Blackpowder is a PvE zombie shooter game taking place during the Napoleonic era after a mysterious disease called the Blight infects Europe. In GMB, you can pick between one of 3 game modes being objective, holdout, or endless. One of 7 classes, and one of many, many regiments across various nations. The game also has a vast array of unlockable badges, weapons, and even some cosmetics for you to unlock. There's even a hardcore mode if you want an added bit of difficulty. Now before I get into what exactly makes this game so perfect, I gotta talk about 3 main things. The classes, zombies, and the game modes. And even though it would make sense for me to talk about the zombies first in a zombie game, I feel as though it would make a little more sense to talk about the classes first and how I feel they fit in the overall gameplay. And what better class to start off with than the class you start as when you join a server, the infantry or the lineman. The infantry comes equipped with a musket with a bayonet attached and a saber. The infantry is also the first of the 3 main offensive classes in the game and is the most versatile of the 3. The infantry can either utilize their bayonet or saber more and provide a safe defensive line in front of their team, or they can utilize their musket for more of a backliner playstyle. Either way, you can still be extremely useful to your team. Speaking of a defensive line, now would probably be the best time to mention the biggest difference between Guts and Blackpowder when it comes to other zombie games: the melee combat. You see, because of the time period being, not modern, the guns in GMB aren't exactly how I would say reliable, with the shortest possible reload time for a gun being 5.32 seconds for a single shot. For comparison, the P2020 in Left 4 Dead 2 has a 2-second reload time on an empty magazine in exchange for 15 shots. Because of this, you'd actually be better off using a melee weapon a majority of the time. But wait, there's more. You see, every melee weapon has between 2 and 4 swing directions, being up, left, right, and down, with each one actually altering the weapon statistics slightly, with the up direction being able to hit headshots more accurately, the side directions being better for AoE, and the down direction having the longest range and shortest windup. This is just one of the many reasons that I find Guts and Blackpowder to be more enjoyable than other zombie shooters. But anyway, back to the classes. Now remember when I said that there was a vast array of unlockable weapons? Well, who would have guessed, but some of those weapons can actually alter the playstyle of a class a little bit. And while I don't have time to go over every weapon, or as a matter of fact, have every weapon, I do want to note some that I find especially enjoyable, such as the cuirass, which actually isn't so much a weapon as it is a regiment. A regiment with a 33% damage and explosion resistance at the cost of 33% fire vulnerability, 10% movement speed debuff, and limited ammo in reserve. Combine that with the lance, which replaces your musket with the longest reaching melee weapon in the game, and it turns you into a juggernaut of a soldier. Or alternatively, if you want to sit back, you can pick the carbine, forfeiting the musket's bayonet, for shovability and a faster reload. On to the second offensive class, the officer. The officer starts with a pistol and an officer saber. Now to those of you with a keen eye, you'll have noticed that I specifically said officer saber instead of just saber, and that's because the officer saber is a little different. The officer's saber gives you a charge meter that fills when you damage zombies or save teammates. Upon filling completely, you can hold your officer saber and activate your charge ability, which will do 3 things: boost teammates' movement speed and swing speed, grant you immunity to grabs, and make those bayonets infantry have do insta-kill damage. And this not only makes officer the perfect frontliner class, but also the most support-like of the 3 offensive classes. But what's that I hear? You want to know if that's all that Officer has to offer? Thankfully, no. Just like Infantry, Officer also has access to the cuirass regiments. And just like Infantry, Officer has their own polearm. But it's not the lance, it's the spontoon. The spontoon has a longer reach than the Officer Saber, and has a different ability to boot. Instead of the charge, you have holdfast, which forms a yellow square around you, and anybody using a bayonet or polearm will be able to crouch down inside it, doing insta-kill damage, as well as doubling the range for any fellow officers using their sabers. On top of that, anybody in the square will get a 33% damage and explosion resistance. That unfortunately does not stack with the cuirass. The last of the offensive classes is the Seaman. Yes, get your laughs out now, but just know that this class carries a saber like the infantry, with a blunderbuss instead of a musket. The blunderbuss fires a giant cluster of pellets that, surprise, surprise, kills a whole lot of zombies, making the Seaman the best for general crowd control. But sometimes, I just find myself wanting to go full Scottish Cyclops and blow everything up. Well, the hand mortars got you covered. Instead of a blunderbuss that shoots pellets, what if God said, 19th century gun that shoots grenades? That's right, you can use a gun that shoots grenades, with infinite reserve. Just don't forget to shoot the grenade before the fuse finishes. Now on to the first of the 4 support classes. We have the Musician, which has a fife and a saber. As you can probably guess, the Musician plays music using the fife, which in turn boosts your teammates' reload speed and sappers' build speed. Or at least it will if you can keep in tune with the metronome. But do be careful, as some things don't respond too well to your constant noise. Alternatively, with the bugle equipped, you can embrace your inner officer and gain a charge meter rather than a metronome. When used, anybody nearby will deal double damage to zombies. But something this little thing has, or should I say doesn't have, is a cooldown. As unlike the Officer Saber and Spontoon, this thing can start charging its meter as soon as it's emptied. Meaning you'll have many situations where you'll get it back faster than the pizza delivery driver in that one episode of Teen Titans Go. Now on to the class I mentioned earlier, the Sapper, which is the second support class. The Sapper has the most unique loadout so far, sporting a hammer and an axe. The axe has a slower swing speed than other melee weapons, but when you do 85 damage on a body shot, you don't need to be fast. This thing also is the original SUV weapon, and it shows as compared to the Carbine's puny stun SUV. This SUV has some defensive properties we'll talk about later when they become relevant. Now the hammer's where things get interesting, as this is what they mean when they say big things come in small packages. Pause. The hammer can build 3 different structures: the barricade, the stakes, and the caltrops, all of which I'm going to go through in a lightning round. The barricade is the most defensive of your buildings, sporting the most health. The stakes are the most offensive of your buildings, having less health than the barricade, but damaging zombies that touch it. Lastly, the caltrops are the most supportive of your buildings, having the least amount of health, but damaging and slowing zombies that walk on them. Are you dying too much as a sapper? Are you sick and tired of trying to repair your building, but you keep getting blown up in the process? Well, with this siege engineer armor, you can have sappers equivalent to the cuirass, at the cost of it being a consumable item rather than a permanent regiment. And like any good salesman knows, you need to throw in a little bit extra on top to seal the deal. So act now and we'll throw in the spade, an alternative to the axe that sacrifices its damage for the ability to entrench your barricades, making them tankier. Now the next 2 classes aren't in the infantry tab, but rather the specialist tab. The third support class, the surgeon, is this game's equivalent to the medic from TF2. Bringing a saber, some medical supplies, and a box of bandages, the surgeon aims to undo all harm brought to their allies. Using the medical supplies, you can go up to any hurt teammate, and after they accept your help, you can proceed to do your job and nurse them back to full health. And if too many people need healing, place down a box of bandages and let them heal themselves. Now, something interesting about the classes in the Specialist tab is that they come with passive abilities. The Surgeons makes it so that all zombies killed by a Surgeon have a 1 in 3 chance to drop supplies. What are supplies, you may ask? Well, they're your equivalent to ammo. You didn't think all this healing was free, did you? Upon healing a teammate, you'll drain supply, and using a box of bandages not only drains the whole bar, but also requires it to be full in order to be placed. So make sure to use that saber to harvest what you can from those undead freaks. Now I heard this from a friend of mine, but some surgeons don't actually carry bandage boxes. They carry extended surgeon kits, which not only increase your supply limit, but increase the rate you heal teammates at, which might just be what you're looking for if combat isn't your biggest fancy. The last class is actually a special one, in the sense that you need to obtain a badge before you can actually play it. The final support class, the Priest, is here to guide you in prayer, along with their stake, crucifix, blessing, and mercy. Now I'm going to put a pin in this conversation real quick to talk about a mechanic that is not only crucial towards understanding the Priest, but also general gameplay. Infection. Unlike in Left 4 Dead 2 and The Last of Us Part 2, you're not immune to the Blight. You see, whenever a Sambler or a Runner attacks you, they'll quickly start to increase a hidden infection meter. When this meter is at least 35% full, most forms of death will turn you into a viral zombie, which is not only much stronger than a normal zombie, but can only spawn when a player succumbs to the infection. Alternatively, if you somehow mess up enough to get 100%, like many wise scholars once said, you're cooked! As after 53 seconds, you'll die from the infection itself and still turn into a viral zombie. Now, a little fun fact about the Blight, it can only affect sinners, meaning any holy individuals, such as the Priest, are completely immune to the infection and thus will never turn into a zombie upon death. And with that out of the way, let's resume our conversation about our Priest friend. The stake they possess is, well, weak, but unlike other weapons, it applies the puncture debuff, which reduces the rate at which zombies infect teammates. The blessing can be used to lower the infection of any infected player by 80%. But if they're too far gone, I'll have to put them out of their misery with a mercy kill, which is literally what mercy is, a mercy kill. Also, blessing has 3 charges that once used will take some time to recharge, or you can perform mercy to refill it instantly, as mercy has no cooldown or charge. And on to perhaps the most interesting item in the game, the crucifix. Upon use, the crucifix will push back and stun almost any zombie, leaving them at your team's mercy. The crucifix has a meter like this officer's saber, but it starts full and instead will charge over the course of 40 seconds after it has been used entirely. Or you can bust a player to add a chunk to the meter directly, or mercy a player to fill it entirely. Both Blessing and the Crucifix have annoying but still interesting cousins known as Divinity and the Exorcism Crucifix. Divinity works like the normal Blessing, but only cures 35% of the infection in exchange for granting the Divinity buff. This buff makes you immune to any infection increases for 20 seconds. Divinity also has the added benefit of charging the Exorcism Crucifix's Exorcism meter. The Exorcism Crucifix is almost completely different from the stock Crucifix, as instead of stunning and pushing back zombies, the Exorcism Crucifix decides it would be much more effective to slow down zombies and do a percentage of their health, and makes you immune to grabs when using it. Its meter also acts exactly like the officer's charge meter. We're finally done with the class section, meaning we can finally talk about the zombies themselves. And unlike the class section, this one won't be a total yap fest, even though there's 8 zombie types. So without further ado, let's talk about these zombies, starting with the Shambler. The Shambler is your most basic zombie. Slow, weak, and anything but dangerous. But put him in a group of 10, 20, 30, and you start to get a problem. Shamblers only have 2 attacks. Their first attack is the grab. Basically, get too close and they'll decide to give you a good stern talking to, since they just start yelling at you. And after a short animation, you'll push them off you. It isn't until they grab you from behind or another one joins in that you start to have a problem. Something that I'll quickly mention here is that this is a team game, meaning you're better off playing as a team considering how many situations you'll be in where you need a teammate to save you from a zombie. Back to Shambler grabs. There's one more aspect about grabs that I'll get into in a little bit, but for now let's talk about their second attack, the scratch. When a Shambler can't grab you for any reason, it'll instead scratch you, dealing some damage, adding some infection, and inflicting the scratch debuff, which prevents infection decay while active. Runners are the second zombie type, and aside from the glowing red eyes, different animations, and faster speed, they look identical to Shamblers. But unlike Shamblers, however, they only have 30 health, meaning most weapons can one-shot them. They also only have 1 attack, being their tackle. But don't let their low health fool you. That's for balancing purposes, because this attack will pin you to the ground, requiring a teammate to save you. This is where that extra part about grabs comes in. Other runners and samblers can pile up on a pinned or grabbed player, and if there's 3 runners on a pinned player or 4 samblers on a grabbed player at once, they die instantly. Also, both runners and samblers can apply the bidden debuff, which slightly raises your infection over time, and reduces all healing sources while it's active. Now, if you thought basic runners were bad, wait till you meet viral runners. Whenever a player dies while infected, they're turned to one of 3 zombies, depending on if certain conditions are met or not. If none of these conditions are met, they're turned to a viral runner. These guys have twice the HP of normal runners, run faster, and have 2 attacks they can do once they pin a player. The first is Rabid Claw. Basically, they turn to an aggressive house cat. This attack also inflicts the Rabid Claw debuff, which works like the Scratched and Bidden debuff combined. Except this debuff doesn't go away, ever. And what if I told you that this was the less disastrous of their 2 attacks? Because their other attack is the Vomiting attack, where they go full Rage Virus and start regurgitating the now useless blood they need to get rid of. This attack also inflicts you with Impending Madness, otherwise known as the main reason Mercy exists, since this stats effect makes your infection skyrocket, and you won't be able to get blessed when you get it. Now, thankfully, virals can't use the Vomit attack on priests. Also, both runners hate music, and they'll target any musicians playing music, except if they're using the bugle. The Bomber is perhaps the most dangerous zombie in terms of player kills, being the only zombie to have a dedicated stat telling how many times you've died to one. Now, if it wasn't obvious, the Bomber explodes when it dies. This guy also has the lowest health of all the zombies, meaning pretty much any damage will kill them instantly. Now I can already hear you asking, well, how can some classes deal with them if they don't have any ranged weapons? And while you might expect me to say something along the lines of teamwork, you can actually just walk up to a Bomber, causing them to light their fuse and blow up around 3 seconds later, which is plenty of time to run away from them. Also, all Bombers happen to be atheist. The Zapper or Sapper zombie is your beefcake zombie. These guys have yellow eyes and a giant axe, but unlike normal sappers, they can't crank 90s. These zombies are tanky, slow, heavy hitters that can do a whopping 65 damage if you find yourself unable to dodge their overhead swing. If you get hit, you also gain the gas debuff, which increases infection from all sources by 40%. Fortunately, priests are also immune to this, and if you're wearing armor, you're also immune to this. This debuff can only also be removed by a surgeon, by the way. What do you get when you cross a normal sapper and the infection? You get a viral sapper. These guys are faster than your standard zappers and prefer a side swing as opposed to the ever so dodgeable overhead one. These guys can even brace. Speaking of bracing, now is when that extra feature about the shove on the axe comes in. After holding down the shove button with an axe, you can brace, which does 2 things. 1, if a Sambler grabs you, you can break free much faster. And 2, if a viral zapper, or a zapper, swings at you, you'll shove them back and take no damage, giving you a small window to counterattack after the animation ends. And before I forget, both sapper variants have a headshot resistance. The Igniter is the only ranged zombie in the game, and outside of hardcore, these guys are kinda rare. These guys carry a whale oil lantern, and after establishing line of sight with a player, they'll throw it, causing a pool of fire that will burn anybody inside. Sit inside a little too long and you not only drop to the floor needing help by a teammate, but you also get the afterburn effect. The debuff caps your health at half, and if these guys are killed before they throw their makeshift Molotov, the area around them will be engulfed in flames instead. It's also important to note that the fire these guys produce does hurt other zombies in sapper buildings, but Igniters themselves are immune to all fire damage. The Cuirassier zombie, or Zero-Seer, is in my opinion the most unique zombie I've seen in any recent zombie game. The Zero-Seer happens to have the same cuirass that officers and infantry can use. Speaking of which, dying while infected while wearing one turns you into a Zero-Seer. Fortunately though, player infected Zero-Seers work identically to naturally spawning ones, meaning there's no viral version. The armor of course does make them resistant to any attacks directed to such areas, needing a strong melee like the axe or a piercing gun to deal damage through. Alternatively, any attacks aimed at their arms only do 30% of their original damage. Zero-Seers have 2 stances that determine what they can do. If a Zero-Seer is far away from any player or targeting a building, they'll have their sword dragging across the ground. In this state, they can perform a charge attack. As the name suggests, they'll charge forward, destroying any unentrenched buildings, and if any unarmored player gets hit by the charge, they'll be stabbed, rendering them completely incapacitated on the ground, needing a surgeon to pull them up to their feet. If the person they run into happens to be prepared enough with armor, they'll instead collide, damaging the player a small bit but not grounding them. The second state they'll be in is the dueling state, which happens when they're close enough to a player, during which their sword will be raised. And in this state, they'll either swing or thrust their sword at you, then back up. In this state, they'll often bow their heads to make use of their armored helmet they're wearing. Attacking with any melee weapon when Azura's attacks will allow you to parry the attack. Currently, there's 15 maps in Guts and Blackpowder, with 9 being objective, 2 being holdout, and 4 being endless. Now, in this section, I'm going to talk about the game modes themselves, with one of their maps providing an idea of what the game mode is itself. Except holdout, since it's only 2 maps, and they both work completely different from each other. Objective mode is most reminiscent of Left 4 Dead 2 in terms of other zombie games. Basically, you need to do tasks in order to progress through the map, with each map having an escape at the end. I'm going to use San Sebastian as an example for objective mode since it represents it in the best way in my opinion. To start, you need to open a gate to a castle. Then you need to proceed down a path until you reach a storage shed packed with explosives. Conveniently, there's a fuse leading out to the shed, which you need to light in order to blow it up to get scraps of the wooden roof. You then need to use the planks as a bridge to avoid a pitfall down the path. You'll then arrive at a raised section of a dock. You'll need to use a capstan to lift explosive barrels and need to blow up a stone wall, then lower somebody down to get a hay bale, then raise the hay bale up to move it towards the hole in the wall to act as a cushion so you don't break your legs. You also need to do all this while being attacked by zombies coming from the path above you and a hole in the wall behind the capstan. These are known as holdout sections, and it's the first of 3 you get in this map. Speaking of holdout sections, after you use the hay bale to break your fall, you end up in the town, and you get your second holdout section, since the next objective is to survive a horde of zombies in the town for several minutes. Zombies will spawn from a building and behind a wooden wall, by the way. After that, you go inside a building, then jump across some rooftops, and end up in another castle. You and your team need to navigate through the castle before starting the finale, during which you and your team need to hold out again until a friendly NPC named Barry raises a platform. After a few minutes, the platform will be raised, giving your team some time to get on it before it descends. But before it finishes, zombies attack and kill Barry. Someone then needs to sacrifice themselves to lower the platform for the other players. The people on the platform are lowered to the coast of the island, where zombies will spawn at the east side while a boat rows towards the coast. If the person who sacrificed themselves dies at any point before the boat arrives, zombies will also start to pour out from the castle and attack those on the coast. When the boat arrives, you just need to get on it and thus ending the map. Endless is the most similar to COD Zombies, and as you might expect, it goes on forever. I'm going to use Tyrolean Village as an example, since it's the most interesting Endless map in my opinion. In it, there are many places you and your team can defend against zombies at, with the main one being a long path next to a cliff. During Endless, Samblers and Zappers will get more health every wave, and for the first 6 waves, only Samblers will spawn. Starting on Wave 7, Bombers and Runners will start to spawn. Wave 13 is when Zappers start spawning, and Wave 16 and 20 is when Cuirassiers and Igniters start spawning respectively. Endless goes on until every player is dead, as you might imagine. Bereznia is the first holdout map, and it's like a combination of Endless and Objective. In Bereznia, you need to build a bridge across a lake, all while dealing with stray zombies and the cold, which can be counteracted by going inside the church. At the start of a map, a wagon of soldiers will provide you with wood to build the bridge with. After delivering all the wood they have, they'll leave to get more. You can then find a claw hammer at the start of the bridge, or use a sapper's hammer to hammer in pieces of the wood you place. After some time, a wave of zombies will spawn, and you'll need to defend against them until the wave's over. Then the wagon comes back, and the cycle repeats until the bridge is done. At which point, caravans will start to go over the bridge before a section breaks, needing to be rebuilt, after which the last wagon will be your escape. Also, once the bridge is finished, Frenzy Mode will activate, which not only acts as a wave of zombies that won't stop, but it also replaces a majority of the Sambler spawns with the runners. St. Petersburg is the second holdout map and differs drastically from Bereznia. In St. Petersburg, you and your team are in the middle of a 4-way intersection of streets, with one containing a pitfall and a drawbridge. You and your team need to defend against zombies coming from the 3 other sides for 10 waves. At the end of each wave, a hobo on a carriage will appear to sell you stuff. Plunder is dropped from zombies and is needed to buy anything from the hobo. The hobo sells various things, but I want to specifically mention the lamplighter and the artillery barrage. As you progress through the map, the sun will set, and you'll need to use the lamplighter to light lamps around the map. The lamps will go out over time, so they don't stay lit forever. And trust me, you want to keep the lamps lit as long as possible because it's very dark without them. The artillery barrage is unique in the fact that you and your team need to instead invest into it. After paying 150 plunder in total, an artillery barrage will rain down at the end of the 3 lanes, killing any zombies in the way. At the end of the 10th wave, a horde of runners will come from all 3 sides before being killed by a scripted artillery barrage. Then you and your team need to raise a flag to beat the map. So now that we've gone over every key topic at hand, we can finally return to the definition of perfect. At the beginning of the video, I said that perfection isn't a one-size-fits-all condition. And what I meant by that is that perfection isn't just being flawless, but it can also be the state of having as little flaws as possible. Guts and Blackpowder does have small flaws, but by looking past them, we can see the perfection of a team-based game, where every single class has a unique purpose that, while being able to be emulated, cannot be copied. I'm going to use Tyrolean Village as an example again, since it provides the best representation of what I'm talking about here. In the very front, you have some sapper buildings, but mainly a barricaded wall, followed by any pikemen, officers, bugle musicians, and sappers. They're the frontmost because of their reliance on melee and or the buffs that can give that would help hold the front line, followed by any surgeons and priests. They're in the middle due to them being support classes that need to be close to the front line for various reasons, as priests can use their crucifix more effectively, and so surgeons can get supplies. Behind them should be another barricade wall to fall back to. Behind the second wall should be seamen, fifes, and musketeers. They're in the back line since they're better for bomber and igniter popping and or dealing with zombies from a distance. Now each class's role helps the team in a way that they do better than any other class. But this doesn't just stop at the classes themselves, as each of the zombies provides a unique threat that makes certain zombies more dangerous in certain situations. Shamblers provide a constant threat that increases the more of them there are, encouraging players to deal with them as they appear to not get overrun. Runners provide a big threat for any frontliner, as well as acting as a way to punish players who overextend past a horde. In turn, all viral zombies, including the cuirassier even though they're the same, act to punish players who neglect the dangers of a horde, or any team that decides they're too good for a priest. Bombers counter sappers' strong defensive tools and punish anybody wildly swinging their melee weapons around. Zappers encourage melee combat as it takes most guns at least 2 shots to the head to kill them, which also happens to be where they're strongest and most dangerous, almost as if you're trying to take the bull by the horns. Igniters work to disrupt the team's flow with a pool of fire to destroy the front line, as well as punish anybody for not staying on their toes. The Cuirassier's offensive and defensive capabilities make them a priority whenever they're past the fences, giving other zombies time to sign, but when they're not, they'll easily breach them with a charge, possibly taking out a player if they're not careful. Both the zombies and the classes work together to provide a constant gameplay loop that meshes together to make everything else more enjoyable and important. The game modes also help to diversify the game so it doesn't feel repetitive as fast, with each being something fans of the genre are familiar with. The cherry on top, however, is the uniqueness the game brings to a genre oversaturated with shooting. Being a predominantly melee-based game with others in the same genre revolve around gunplay not only makes your game stand out from the rest, but also cements itself in the minds of those who play it. So even if you didn't like Guts and Blackpowder because of its melee combat, you can still come to appreciate it's different from other games in the genre. The infection system also gives the game much higher stakes, so it actually feels like you're in a zombie apocalypse rather than a character who's immune to this virus for the sake of game balancing. The game also highly encourages teamwork with things such as healing, curing the infection, saving people, etc. Mix everything I've said so far together and you get a game that not only stands out, but a game that knows what they want the player to do and how to encourage the player to do it in a way that makes the player proud they did it. I hope y'all liked this video, and if you did, I hope you wouldn't mind hitting the like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. Also, as of the time I'm writing the script, I'm not actually sure what my next video is going to be about, but hopefully it'll be another video essay style video. If y'all have any suggestions, you can put them in the comments. But anywho, this is the Tides of Coconut Water, and I hope you have a great rest of y'all day.